Yes, okay, today we're going to be going over 3 types of level and lift kits we do here at Truck World. First one, puck or spacer level. This can give your truck anywhere from 1 to 3 inches of front end height without replacing any other components. Cost on this parts starts at about $50 and can go up to $250. I'm sure there's somebody out there that costs more than that, but that's a general idea. Then you've got to add in your labor and your alignment. Install time is 1 to 2 hours. The level of skill needed for this installation, basically you have a couple of wrenches and a decent brain. Not too difficult to do these. So that is what we're going to jump into first. We're going to talk about, this one happens to be Faction Fab, but there are many different kinds out there. Like I said, prices range all over the place. So what this is this is a spacer level, and this is what it looks like. It's just a little puck that goes on top of your stock struts. So all you have to do, get the wheel or truck up, get the wheel off, disconnect your upper control arm, pull this strut out, put this on, and put it back in the truck, preloading the spacer and giving it a little bit more height so you get this level kit, or level look rather, out of your truck. You can see the difference there. And to give you a little bit more of an idea, that is how it looks. So this is your stock strut, and then this is what you're talking about by bolting that on. So not too crazy difficult to get these on your vehicle and give you a pretty good look. Cheapest way of getting that level look out of your truck. So that is what your puck or spacer level kit. Next is we're going to talk about is the upper control arm kit. This can give your truck anywhere from 2 to 4.5 inches of height on the front end, replacing the stock upper control arms and usually adding at least 1 inch of rear lift to the truck with either a block or an extra leaf spring in the rear. Cost of this is somewhere between $400 to $1,200. Again, there's probably others out there, maybe cheaper or more expensive, but this is just a general rule of thumb. Install time is about 3 to 4 hours, and level of skill for installation is I have a lot of tools and I've worked on vehicles before. You could do this at home, but where I say you have to have a lot of tools, where usually this involves a strut compressor and some other things that most people don't have unless you've worked on vehicles before. So let's jump into those real quick. This is Ready Lift's SST kit, or upper control arm kit. This is your aftermarket upper control arm that replaces the factory. These are your preload spacers that go in between the spring and the top hat of the strut. Then, just as we talked about with the puck level, this is the puck that goes on top, as we saw in this picture here. That's what we're talking about there. And then the other one goes in between the spring right there. Then you have on the rear these blocks. So what you would do is add those in. They take place of the factory, or if your truck doesn't have factory blocks, they would go underneath your leaf spring, in between your axle and your leaf spring, and then the U-bolts here that connect. So this is a fairly considerable, more intensive job than just the level kit, as you are taking factory control arms out, putting these in on both sides. You're taking the strut apart and adding in that, and then adding the top hat, and then you have to disconnect your axle in the rear one at a time, or at least that's how we do it, to put those blocks in. So you can see it's a considerably more intensive kit. Now, how this allows your suspension to move or to work better without replacing the location of the control arms is, as you can see here, this is a control arm. So that's what we're talking about replacing. Now, this is an Icon one. This is a much higher end piece, but for this purpose it will work. So what that does is that allows this to come out further, and as it articulates, go further down and potentially further up. So what that does is, as you lift the truck, this control arm goes from a stagnant height that would normally come, straight out or just at a slight dip, to when you added 3 inches, it would, dip down and be somewhere around here, and then pull that wheel further in, messing up the alignment and things like that. What the aftermarket upper control arms do is they're a different shape, or longer, meaning further out, allowing this to drop further down without colliding with this shock here and giving proper alignment or proper geometry so that it can go, at a stagnant height. This can be further down like it is here in this picture and still function the way the truck is meant to function. So that kind of gives you an idea of how that works. There's a really crude way of saying it, but it gets the point across, I believe. Then you have bracket lifts. Bracket lifts are an intensive piece or an intensive labor part. Anyways, let's go through this. Bracket lift, this can give your truck anywhere from 4 to 12 inches of front end height and rear end as well by relocating your lower control arms and by adding a bracket lower than the stock connection for your lower control arms and changing most of your suspension components. The cost on this is anywhere between $1,100 and $5,000 plus. Installation time is anywhere from 6 to 12 hours, and level of skill needed for installation is basically, I grew up with a wrench in my hand. I know things about trucks, and I have access to a shop. This is not something that I would want to take on in my driveway, even though you maybe could do it, but I would want to have a shop and be able to get the truck up in the air to be able to do this. Now, as we go over this here, I've got this Ready Lift kit pulled up, or actually, you know what, we're going to skip to the BDS one here. So, this is the BDS 4-inch suspension lift kit. What that does is it replaces, this is a better way of explaining it. So here is your stock cross member. This bolt that I'm hovering over here is where the lower control arms used to connect in. This is your lower control arm to the vehicle. Now what a bracket lift is this bracket right here that goes and bolts into where the stock lower control arms originally were, and there's two of those, front and rear, lowering down the position of your lower control arm, adding in a taller spindle, just this piece right there, and then leaving your stock, somewhat stock geometry of your upper control arm and things along those lines. So what you can see here is you've got two brackets, the extra spindles, a spacer level kit, or spacer shock extension, and then the blocks, as we talked about, in the rear to lift the rear up. This is a much more intensive way. Now, one thing to note here is that you are permanently modifying your vehicle. This is your differential that I'm hovering over right there. And in order for it to be in its current location in this picture, this cross member, or the backside of this cross member, had to be cut in order to drop this down. Now, don't worry about that because these brackets hold it in place, or the frame where you're cutting out in place. But this also does mean, unless you're a custom fab person, that you can never go back to stock. You are cutting out a piece of your suspension or a piece of your frame on this vehicle. Again, like I said, it is replaced, but it isn't able to return back to stock. So you have to lower your differential down. You have to change quite a few things, the location of your tie rod or steering. You've got to change a bunch of different componentry pieces in here to get this to work. Once you go to a bracket lift, you're most likely not coming back from that. But it also does give you the maximum lift. The typical that we do here at Truck World is about 6 inches of suspension lift, or a 6-inch bracket lift. But I hope this gives you an idea of what it takes to go to that level. So as you're looking through the trucks that we have, and you're looking at why trucks are priced the way they are, or what we're doing with certain trucks, hopefully this gives you a better understanding of the different types of lift kits that we do here and what they mean. We'll go more into depth with all three because there's many more ways of doing this, or many different ways of, or different parts, or this and that and the other, but these were the three basic ways of lifting or leveling your truck.